All right, so picture this. You're calling the shots. You're the head honcho on marketing for Colgate. Colgate, everybody's heard of them. You just figure customer loyalty, it's a given, right? But that's where how brands grow throws a real curveball. And honestly, it gets even wilder from there, believe me.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink some of those, those marketing instincts we think we've honed over the years. And the thing is, this isn't just like, some marketing guru's opinion. We're talking decades of research, hardcore data coming from Byron Sharp and the Ehrenberg Best Institute. These are the folks that work with the big dogs, the Coca-Colas, the Colgate-Palmolives of the world. This is real-world stuff, not just pie-in-the-sky theories.
No, for sure. This is data-driven stuff. And speaking of data, there's this Colgate case study, right? That's in the book. Turns out they were actually lagging behind Crest when it came to customer loyalty in the U.S., of all places. I bet their marketing team has some theories about why that was happening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they probably sounded pretty familiar, right? Like maybe Colgate was pulling in the wrong kind of buyer. Their ads just needed a little more oomph. It's like marketing 101 explanations you hear in every meeting.
It's so true. It just seems like common sense,
Yeah.
But that's what I find so fascinating about Sharp's work. He takes these, what seem like totally logical assumptions, and puts them through the ringer of scientific testing. And more often than not, the results are like completely flipped on their head.
And here's the kicker. This Colgate thing, this isn't some isolated incident. It actually points to these bigger patterns, these almost like scientific laws of brand growth, as Sharp calls them.
Hold on. Scientific laws in marketing. Okay, now you've got my attention. Break that down for me.
Think of it like, physics or chemistry. These are like predictable patterns that hold true whether you're selling shoes or software, even across different countries. It's wild. They cut across categories. They transcend cultures. It's crazy.
So you're saying that relying on our gut, those like aha moments, and don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of those, could actually be leading us down the wrong path.
It's like trusting a compass that's pointing south instead of north. Sharp actually makes this brilliant comparison in the book to bloodletting. For centuries, it was like the gold standard of medicine until, obviously, scientific methods came along and revealed just how dangerous it actually was. He's basically calling for that same kind of evidence-based revolution, but in marketing.
Okay, you've definitely got me hooked. Give me an example. What's one of these, like, sacred marketing cows that Sharp totally debunks?
All right, buckle up, because this one's a doozy. The idea that differentiating your brand is like absolutely vital for success.
Wait, hold on. Isn't standing out from the crowd like marketing 101? Like the whole point?
Right. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But Sharp's research throws a wrench in that. He's saying it's not as clear-cut as we've been told. He actually found that brands, they often compete more as like near lookalikes, even when they're pouring tons of resources into trying to stand out.
Whoa, you're blowing my mind here. You mean to tell me all that blood, sweat, and tears that goes into crafting this, like, unique brand identity might not be as effective as we thought?
It really makes you reconsider where those marketing dollars are going, right?
Yeah?
And get ready for it, because it doesn't stop there. Another one, another sacred cow, this idea that loyalty metrics are like the ultimate reflection of brand strength. But Sharp throws some serious shade on that, too. He's saying it's more about a brand's size, how easily it pops into people's minds, not necessarily how much those customers, swear by it.
Okay, so we've been schooled on how loyalty isn't the be-all and end-all it's cracked up to be. Where does that leave us then? What's the new playbook if we're buying what Sharp's selling?
Yeah.
So we've been schooled, right? Loyalty, not the be-all, end-all we thought it was. So where does that leave us? If we're on board with Sharp's thinking here, what's the new game plan? What are we doing?
Well, it means like a real mind shift, moving away from that whole like laser focus on turning customers into like diehard fans, and instead thinking about reaching as many potential buyers as possible.
So casting a wide net instead of like trying to hook the same fish over and over again.
Exactly. Sharp, he's all about penetration, which basically means getting more people to buy your brand, even if it's just once, within, a specific time frame.
Yeah.
And this applies whether you're talking about something you pick up every week at the grocery store or like a big purchase, like a car.
Got it. So penetration equals growth. But how do we actually make that happen? How do we become that brand that's like just effortlessly popping into people's heads right when they're about to buy something?
Well, advertising, it's still huge. but probably not in the way you're thinking.
Okay.
It's less about those super persuasive, knock your socks off arguments and more about just consistently reminding people about your brand, keeping those mental connections strong.
So more like a gentle nudge than a grand slam home run.
Yeah, exactly. Sharp talks about how most advertising, it works more by just refreshing what people already know about your brand, not necessarily trying to build all these new ideas from scratch. It's about creating those mental shortcuts, making your brand the easy choice.
Right. Which is where those distinctive brand assets come in, right?
Right.
That seems to fit in perfectly with this whole mental availability thing.
You got it. Sharp's a big believer in identifying and then really consistently using those unique elements that make your brand instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
We're talking logos, colors, taglines, even a brand's tone of voice.
Okay.
These distinctive assets, they're like mental triggers. They make it easier to recall your brand when you need it.
Like those golden arches, right?
Right.
Screaming McDonald, even if you're just driving by, not even hungry in that moment.
Exactly. It's like a visual shorthand for your brand, helps you cut through all the noise in the marketplace. But it's not enough just to have these assets. You got to use them, and you got to use them consistently.
Across the board, everywhere.
Across all your marketing, all the time.
So consistency is king, both in your message, but also in how you look, right?
Right.
It's about showing up regularly and staying true to that brand identity.
Bingo. And that's where a lot of brands, they kind of stumble, They get caught up in the next big trend or they try to be a little too clever and they lose sight of that consistent brand presence.
It's like they're going for a catchy jingle over actually building a relationship with the customer.
100%. And speaking of making choices, let's talk about price promotions for a sec. Sharp has some really interesting things to say about those too.
Yeah, let's do it, because something tells me he's about to throw down some more truth bombs when it comes to discounts.
You'd be right. So most marketers, they see price promotions as the go-to for bringing in new customers, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's where it gets interesting. Sharp's research, it actually found that price promotions, they mostly reach existing customers, the ones already buying your brand.
Hold on. But you see the sales spike when you run a promotion. It works.
Oh, absolutely. But a lot of those sales, they're coming from your loyal customers who are probably going to buy your product anyway. They're just stocking up while it's cheaper.
So instead of reeling in new customers, we're basically training our existing ones to wait for a discount.
Exactly. And here comes another curveball. Ready?
Tip me.
Sharp suggests that instead of constantly slashing prices, brands should be focusing on building up that mental and physical availability, making it stupid easy for people to buy your product at full price.
Okay.
Makes sense?
So it's about building a brand that's so desirable, so readily available that the price tag, it becomes less of a factor, which is, it's a longer game, right? But it feels like a way more sustainable one.
100%. And this all ties back into the beauty of this whole evidence-based marketing thing.
Yeah.
We need to be brave enough to question what we think we know, scrutinize the data, be willing to make decisions based on what's actually moving the needle, not just marketing folklore.
It's challenging the status quo, even if it means admitting that maybe we've been doing things the hard way for way too long.
Yeah.
Which, I'll be honest, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Oh, for sure. Can be humbling.
Yeah.
But it can also be incredibly liberating.
Right.
Because once you start looking at marketing through the lens of these scientific laws,
right.
Once you really understand what truly fuels growth, it opens up a whole new world.
It's like someone just handed you the missing puzzle pieces.
And those missing pieces, they make all the difference in the world, because when we actually start applying these scientific principles to our marketing, we can, eliminate waste, become more efficient, and ultimately, achieve more effective growth.
It's like trading in your leaky bucket for a high-powered hose. You're still watering the garden of brand growth, but with a tool that's a million times more effective.
Yeah.
Speaking of tools, you mentioned something earlier that really resonated with me, this strategic assumptions test.
Yeah.
What is that exactly, and how can our listeners actually use it to start applying Sharp's ideas to their own work?
Ah, yes. The strategic assumptions test.
Yeah.
It's so good. Honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the book because it's so practical. It's
Yeah.
basically a series of questions, and they're designed to challenge those deeply ingrained marketing beliefs that we kind of take for granted.
So it's like holding up our marketing instincts to the mirror and seeing if they pass the test.
Precisely. And some of them, as we've been discussing, they might not look so good under that harsh light, but that's where the real learning begins. So, are you ready to put your marketing assumptions on trial?
I'm all in. Yeah. Let's dive into Sharp's strategic assumptions test and see what marketing myths we can bust wide open.
Let's do it.
But we're going to save that for our listeners in part 3 because this deep dive, it is far from over. We're just getting started. So stay tuned. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We're putting those marketing myths through the ringer with Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow. Before the break, we were about to get our hands dirty with his strategic assumptions test. Ready to bust some myths.
Oh, absolutely. Time to separate fact from fiction. And let me tell you, some of these, well, they might make you want to rethink your whole game plan.
Love it. Hit me with the first assumption on the chopping block.
All right, so assumption number 1. Differentiating your brand is vital. We kind of touched on this earlier, but the strategic assumptions test, it really drives the point home. Sharp's research, it suggests that most of the time brands, they're competing as like near lookalikes, regardless of how much effort they put into standing out.
So all those hours, all those late nights, agonizing over a unique selling proposition, maybe not the best use of time.
It's not that differentiation is completely useless, but it's not the be-all and end-all. The real MVP here, it's building that mental availability, becoming the brand that just pops into people's heads when they're about to buy.
Makes sense? So what's the next assumption we're putting on trial?
Okay, how about this one? Loyalty metrics are the ultimate measure of brand strength. Now, this is a biggie. A lot of marketers, they swear by loyalty metrics. But Sharpry, he's got some different ideas. He argues that loyalty, it often says more about a brand's size, its visibility, not necessarily some deep emotional connection with customers.
So a brand with a huge chunk of the market share, they might seem super loyal just because people are buying them more, not necessarily because they love them more than the competition.
You got it. It's about being top of mind, easy to remember, easy to find on the shelves.
So it's not just about winning hearts, it's about winning minds too.
Exactly. Okay, ready for another marketing myth to bite the dust. All right, how about customer retention is cheaper than acquisition? This one always feels a little counterintuitive, but Sharp's research actually says that getting new customers, it's just as important for growth as holding on to the ones you already have.
So that whole thing, it costs 5 times more to acquire a new customer. Maybe not the golden rule we thought it was.
Right. It's not that retention doesn't matter, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't come at the expense of, bringing in fresh faces.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
Right? Keeping your current customers happy, but always being on the lookout for new ones.
Exactly. And this kind of ties into another myth that Sharp tackles. Mass marketing is dead. In today's world, it's all about targeting, personalization, algorithms. It's tempting to think that mass marketing, it's a dinosaur. But Sharp, he makes a case for reaching a broad audience. It's still super relevant, especially when it comes to building that mental availability, keeping your brand on people's radar.
So those Super Bowl ads, those massive billboards, they're not just for bragging rights.
Nope. They actually serve a purpose. It's about casting a wide net, making sure your brand is visible, even to people who might not be your ideal customer, at least not yet.
It's like you never know who's going to see your message and think, hey, I need that.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about Sharp's work. He forces you to rethink all those marketing beliefs that we've held onto for so long. He makes you consider different approaches that might actually be more effective,
Yeah.
especially in the long run.
So it's about being open to new ideas, being willing to admit that what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. It's about evolving.
100%. And that's what's going to set marketers apart, Those who are willing to adapt, to keep learning, those are the ones who are going to thrive.
It's about approaching marketing with a scientist's mindset, testing, analyzing, refining your strategy based on data, on evidence, not just on a hunch.
Yes. And that's why How Brands Grow, it's such a game changer. It gives you a framework, a way to make smarter decisions that lead to real, lasting growth.
Awesome. So for our listeners who are ready to ditch those marketing myths, who are ready to fully embrace this evidence-based approach, what's the one thing they should take away from all of this?
Never stop questioning. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Look for the data. Be open to new ideas because the world of marketing, it's constantly changing. And the more willing you are to change with it, the better off you'll be.
Love it. So it's about being a student of the game, always learning, always growing, and of course, always keeping those marketing minds curious.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into how brands grow with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, for really breaking down these concepts. For anyone listening who's looking to shake things up, to really level up their marketing, this book, it's a must read.
Couldn't agree more. It's a game changer.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. For everyone listening, thank you for joining us. And until next time, happy marketing.